and welcome to my channel. Today we are tackling my 300 plus book TBR, starting with the ebooks. So I have 118 ebooks on my TBR, and I don't even like reading ebooks. They are not my preferred format. I prefer reading physically or audiobooks, so I really need to go through these books. I have been collecting them for over 5 years now, and I just need to get through them. So I have read the first chapter of all 118 of these books, and in this video I'm going to be telling you if I'm continuing these books or DNFing them. And if you want to jump around to any part of this video, I will have timestamps linked down below so you can jump to whatever section you want to see me talk about specifically. But I do want to first talk about this project as a whole. So that's what I'm going to do. And first, I think it is important to talk about Amazon. So Amazon owns Kindle, and Kindle is the app that I use on my phone, on all of my devices, really, to read my ebooks. It is what I have been using to read ebooks for pretty much my entire life, and part of 2025 my goal is to distance myself as much as possible from Amazon. I have already stopped using Goodreads, and I feel like not using Kindle is the next step in my life's progress of distancing myself from Amazon. But like I already said, I don't really enjoy reading ebooks. It honestly hurts my eyes. I've tried all the different fonts and the different light settings, but it isn't for me. And I am never the kind of person who, when I am home, I want to read an ebook. I'd rather read physically if I'm at home. I only read ebooks if I'm out and about and I don't have headphones with me to listen to an audiobook. So overall, I do not need 118 ebooks on my TBR. It's just not necessary, and I don't use NetGalley anymore, which is a big part of why I have collected so many ebooks as well. But even if I was to get a book sent to me from a publisher that's an ebook, there are other ebook apps out there, and there are a couple of them that I use as well, or have been trying to start using through the past year. So there are other options out there, and I just need to get all of these books off of my Kindle TBR so I can really focus on not reading ebooks at all, and if I do, reading them on a separate app. But that's sort of point number one. Point number two, I've kind of also already touched on, and that is that I have over 300 books on my TBR. I need to read them down, and this challenge is going to help me get rid of all of those ebooks that I've collected over many years that I don't remember that I have no interest in. I don't know about you, but personally, my taste in books has changed over the last 5 years, and also having ebooks that are on my phone that I never really scroll through. I don't know most of the things that are on there or why I have them, so that's kind of how this whole video idea started. Also from the whole try a chapter tag, which is what I did. I read 118 first chapters, which was so much, but I have done it. In this video, you're gonna see which ones I have decided to DNF, which ones I've decided to continue. It's going to be a long video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I put a lot of work into this video. It took me so much time and it was very stressful, but I am very happy with the end result. So I hope you guys will stick through this video, but let's just dive into all of the books that I have DNF'd first. So as a disclaimer, I feel like that is important to talk about when talking about books that I'm not going to continue reading. There is nothing against these books. Again, I'm basing this on the first chapter, a little bit on the synopsis, and if I have any interest in the book. And I don't want anyone to take that personally or to think that these are bad books, because that is not the case. They are just books that don't interest me, that don't really capture my attention right away. And since I have so many books on my TBR, I don't want to have books on there that I am not overly excited to read. Also, when I talk about these books, there are no particular order. The only order that I have to this video is the one section about books I DNF and the other section about the ones that I'm going to continue. And besides that, within those categories, there's no rhyme or reason to how these books are ordered in this list. So yeah. And if there is a book on this list that I am DNFing and you really love, I would love to hear it in the comments below, or if you think I would actually enjoy one of those books, I would also like to know that, because I can be easily influenced to continue one of these books, honestly. I have no ill will towards any of these books, so I could definitely be convinced, but let's just hop into these DNFs, because I'm gonna be honest with you, there was a lot. Also, I forgot to mention, I do not talk about all of these books in depth, like their synopsis, what they're about, why I decide to DNF them. Some of them I do. Most of them, I'm just going to tell you that I DNF them, because we would be here forever if I went in depth with all these books. So, without further ado, let's get started. Starting off, we have Outrun the Wind, Letters to Molly, How to Fracture a Fairy Tale, Every Last Breath, The Infinite Noise, which this is a YA book set in high school, which I don't read YA too much anymore, and high school books are a hard sell for me because I didn't like high school. I don't really want to read about high school anymore. That was way in the past, just not my thing. Wish Our Hearts Away, Kisses and Croissants, As Dust Dances, Once Upon a Duke. And these next 5, I'm going to talk about them all at the same time, but that is Where Darkness Blooms, The Pairing, Coyote Lost and Found, The Jinba of Shantyport, and The Heiress. And the reason I'm talking about these all at the same time is because last year I did a project where I was reading all of my NetGalley books, and I also did a first, try a chapter sort of tag for it, and these were the only 5 books out of, I believe, 20 or 30 that I decided to continue. Well, that's not true. There were 6, but one of those is on the continue ones. But these 5 are ones that in that original video, I said after the first chapter I was going to continue reading them, and I never did. And these 5 books specifically, I've never thought about in that time again. So that is why they're finally going on the DNFs, because if I said I was going to continue them a year ago and never did and never thought about them, then they aren't ones that I am truly overly excited to read. So it's just time to go ahead and DNF these 5 books. Girl from Nowhere, Taming the Minotaur, London Royal, Upright Woman Wanted is one that I got about 40% into a while ago and never continued, so I've also never thought about it, and I didn't even remember that I had read it, so this one's just going to be DNF'd because obviously I DNF'd it a while ago whenever I actually was reading this book. His Forbidden Desire, which is by an author I have read a couple of books by before, and they've all been around 3 stars. And this first chapter specifically didn't intrigue me enough to want to continue on with this book, and knowing that this author has a pattern with me of only being an average rated book, I don't see the need to continue on with this one. Demons of Desire, Mask of Shadows, Don't Ask Me Where I'm From, Washed Up, which is an interesting book for me because I don't like books that have a monster romance set in the water. I have a fear of the ocean, of large bodies of water. So books set specifically under the sea, in water. This one was started off on a cruise ship, but considering it's a monster romance, they're probably going to be in the water at some point. I'm not sure why I had this one on my TBR to begin with, because it obviously wasn't going to be something that I enjoyed, but yeah, nothing wrong with this one. I know this one has really excellent representation in it, but I know that it is not going to be for me personally. Also, a side note that I didn't mention, a lot of these books I got for free from Stuff Your Kindle days, or just anytime someone somewhere online said that a book they love is now free on Amazon, I would just get it without ever looking into the book. So that is sort of how this collection has come about, is basically from a bunch of free books that I had access to, which definitely is something I did not need to be doing even if they're free. But yeah, I feel like I needed to throw that in because I feel like someone's going to question how I got all these books, and it is definitely not by spending my own money on them, thankfully, but that is why I have so many of them. Frisky Business, The Earl and His Lady, Rescued by Keon, Birthday Cake, Middle Game, which is one that kind of surprised me and also kind of didn't. This is a very hyped up book by an author who I love the Wayward Children series by. And I will be honest, this one has been on my TBR since it came out because everyone talked about it, everyone loved it. Again, super hyped up, and it's by an author I enjoy another series by. However, anytime this book has ever been mentioned by someone online, they have never pitched it in a way that has intrigued me, which is also why I've never picked it up and read it. And it's not for me, which I should have known from the fact that I've never been intrigued by the synopsis of this book, but yeah, this one just did not intrigue me in the slightest, but it is what it is. Rebel Rose, Fox, the Vampire King, Out of Left Field, which is another high school YA book, Floored, Fair Catch, Garnished with a Candy Cane, Gardens of the Moon, which I know is a very popular fantasy series. I know that it is. It's kind of why I had it. It's sort of hyped up as one of the best fantasy books and like series of all times. I always see it like on lists with like The Name of the Wind or Game of Thrones, but honestly, this first chapter was so boring. I could not care less, and I don't have time to read super long fantasy books written by men. Personal choice, but this one just definitely wasn't for me. Regarding the Duke, The Wright Brother, White Stag, I have the box set of Butterfly and Atlas, and I'm gonna be honest, I have no clue what was happening in this first chapter of this first book. It's a box set of 3, I believe. Just because it's a box set, there's actually quite a few on this list that I will be talking about, but whenever it is a box set, if it is still just like one book on like the Kindle app, I only count it as one. Even though it's like a box set of multiple books, I still only count it as one for all of my stats. So just so you know, this doesn't count as 3 books. It's 1 in my opinion, but yeah. I'm DNFing it. The Lost King, Broken Wish, which is a YA historical fantasy, which definitely isn't my vibe. I'm not a historical fantasy girly, so definitely not my thing. Chasing Pebbles, City of the Plague God, Kaleidoscope Hearts, which is a collection of short stories from various authors. It takes a lot to sell me on a short story collection. I'm not the biggest fan of short stories, and this one just doesn't have that like special something to really intrigue me to want to read all of these short stories. Fake Dating Her Best Friend's Brother, Rain, In the Care of Magic. This one is a witchy sort of story, and cozy witch stories just aren't my vibe. Solstice Dream, which is another witch story. Fire Wave, Sasha Masha, Good Girl, Kissing Tolstoy, Determining Possession, which is technically the 3rd book in the series. I believe it was book 1 that I read earlier this month, and I DNF'd it. It was not my vibe, so I'm not surprised that this one also didn't work for me, and I do believe it is just this series because there's another book by this author that I will be continuing, so stay tuned for that. The Dukes of War, Throne of Deceit, Hosed, Wolf God, the Abby George series, which is another box set of 3 that I'm getting rid of. Lord of Eternal Night, The Double D Ranch, Her Irish Treasures, which is another 3-book bind-up that I had. I honestly have no clue why I got so many of these like box sets, bind-ups, I'm not sure. Hot Button Issue, Bound by Song, Naughty and Nice, Possessed by the Alien King, The Single Dad, which had a title change while I was doing this video. So the original title was The Beast, and that is what I had down on all of my spreadsheets. But when I finished this book that said The Single Dad and I could not find it anywhere on my spreadsheets, I was super confused and I thought I had actually missed one and all of my numbers were off. But no, it just had a title change, so that was a bit of a panic it had me in, but I figured it out, luckily. When the Earl Was Wicked, Sweet Addiction, Tangled Up, Beach Reads box set, which is another box set I'm taking off of my TBR, Laws of Physics, Sweet Obsession, Just Say When, The Night in Lover's Bay, Bounty, And finally, the last book that I have DNF'd is only 1/10. So that is 77 books out of the 118 that I am DNFing. And just to put that in some sort of perspective, that is 65%. I have DNF'd 65% of the ebooks on my TBR, which is kind of crazy, but also very freeing. So from DNFing all 77 of these books, it has brought my overall TBR to 255, and that is under 300, which is so great. That is so much progress. It feels very nice to not be over 300 because there is no way I was ever going to read 300 books in a year. And to get that number so much lower, it seems much more obtainable. I'm not going to read 255 books this year, considering we're already 2 months in, but it is a more obtainable number, and with the number of books that I do read in a year, my end number should be something that does not terrify me as much as almost 350 books does. So I am very, very happy that I did this project. I don't know how I can express that anymore, but the relief that I feel to have finally gone through all of these books, gotten rid of the ones that I have no interest in, is just such a great feeling. And to now look at my TBR of ebooks, it's all books that I'm super excited to read, that I have an interest in. Some of these books I may have forgotten about, but from reading the first chapter, it has renewed my interest in them, really sparked my interest, and has made me really excited to read them. And whether I pick them up as an ebook or I get like the physical book from my library in order to actually read it, I want to read these books, and that is a very great feeling. That's how you should feel about the books on your TBR. And yeah, this was just a really great project for me personally to just curate my little ebook space, and it makes me really happy to have gotten rid of all those books. It is a very large number, and it is kind of sad in some ways that I ever got all of those books, but again, I feel very happy. And also, there's a bunch of books that I kept, and that is really great. That makes me really happy. So let's go ahead and talk about those books. Again, no particular order. I don't talk about all of them in depth, but let's just go ahead and talk about all of the books that I have decided to keep. The first book will probably come as no surprise, and that is Well, Actually. And if you've been on my channel for any amount of time, you've probably heard me absolutely gush about Maisie Edding's writing. This is my all-time favorite author. This is their newest book that was sent to me by the publisher, and of course it is one that I'm going to be continuing. I'm actually 40% of the way through as of recording this video, and I will probably be done with it by the time this video gets uploaded, but this book is so much fun, definitely a 5-star read, and definitely one that was going to always stay on this TBR. Silver in the Wood, The Wild Child, Notting Hill, which is my most recent acquisition, and that is because I'm on the ARC team for this book. And as a little synopsis, because I am on the ARC team, this one is about this nerdy wolf who runs a bookstore and this human actress who he has always loved as like a celebrity crush, and she ends up coming into his bookstore one day, and that is the first chapter. But it is really cute so far, and I'm really looking forward to continuing it. Once Dishonored, Never Say Duke and Dukes Actually are two books that are part of the same historical romance series. They're set in this year-round Christmas town, and the first chapter of both of these really intrigued me, and I'm excited to continue with them both. Always Mine, Archon, The Best of Nordic Speculative Fiction. This is the only book from that NetGalley list that I was talking about in that DNF section. This is the only book that I have decided to keep going with, and this one is a collection of speculative fiction, all by different Nordic authors from like different Nordic regions and countries, and that just really appeals to me. I want to try out some more of these short stories. Some of them have been like 4 stars, the most of them have been 3 stars. This is one that I have read, I think, 4 short stories from so far, but it is one that I have thought about continuing. It's the only one from the original 6 books on that NetGalley list, so that is why it is on the will continue side of this video. A Lady of Rooksgrave Manor, Love Notes, Structural Damage, The Stone and the Star, a photo finish which is by an author that I have another book on my physical TBR, so knowing that I like the writing style of this first chapter makes me really happy because now I have this book and a physical book by this author that I get to try out. Also, this is a very popular romance author, so that also makes me happy. Debt, The Oath, The Roommate Risk, which is by Talia Hibbert, and of course I was going to keep a Talia Hibbert book. One of my all-time favorite romances is by Talia Hibbert, which is Actor Age Eve Brown. I absolutely adore that book, so of course this one was going to be staying on this list. Okay, the next 4 books are all by the same author, and that is Haunting and Company, Cloak and Dagger Burlesque, Jockstraps and Newspapers, and Deal with the Devil. All of these books are by Lizzie Strong, who I really enjoy her writing, and I will be trying all of these books. It was a bit of a no-brainer that these 4 books were staying on this list, and they are all recent acquisitions of mine, so they're more recent in my mind, and I already knew that I wanted to continue with them. Let This Radicalize You is a nonfiction book all about activism, and that is what I have been reading a lot of nonfiction books about, and this is also one of those books that I've gotten very recently. So again, another one that's on this list that comes as no surprise to me, but this one was always going to stay on this list. Broken Chain, The Other Mothers, which is another nonfiction book, and this one is specifically talking about, I believe it's a memoir, but it's about these 2 queer women in a relationship who want to have a child and their experience with the medical staff surrounding that, which just sounds very intriguing to me and is definitely one that I want to continue with. And this is also one of the more older books on my TBR that I had no clue what it was about. I forgot all about it, and again, it's been on my TBR for so many years now, but I really enjoyed that first chapter, which was a bit of a surprise. So I am happy to discover a new book that I'm very interested in actually getting to. Unbuild Walls, Let Me Love You, Elite Capture, A False Start, Wait For It, which is a romance book by an author who I have read before and really loved that book, so I wasn't too surprised that I enjoyed the writing style of this first chapter, and I'm intrigued enough to continue with it, which makes me really happy, and I'm very excited to give this one a try soon. The Black Anti-Fascist Tradition, The Secret Garden, which is a book that was always going to be staying on this list because it is part of my top 100 book scratch-off poster, which I've mentioned in a few previous videos, but I have this poster of the top 100 books. They're mainly all classics, and it is a goal of mine to sometime in my lifetime scratch off all 100 of those books, and since this one was on there, it was obviously going to be one that I wanted to keep on my TBR in order to complete that goal of mine. How We Get Free, Him, which is a hockey romance that I've heard so many good things about, and I really like the first chapter, so I'm excited to see where that one goes. Hope in the Dark, Stealing the Troll's Heart, which is another one of my more recent acquisitions, and this one I have read another thing by this author, a short story, which was in a previous collection that I read back in January. It was one of the very first books that I read in 2025, and I did not really enjoy that collection at all, but one of the 5-star stories in that collection was by this author, and when I saw that this book was free, I of course had to get it, and I am looking forward to trying out more things by this author, obviously starting with this one, but yeah, I'm very happy. But yeah, that one was staying on this list. The Virgin Suicides, Socialism Seriously, Alien Bride Lottery, which is the only box set that I have decided to keep, Class Struggle Unionism, and Her Morning Star. So I am keeping only 41 out of 118 books on my ebooks TBR, which is kind of wild, but at the same time, 41 books is so much still. But at least I know that I am interested in all 41 of those books. That makes me very happy. But again, I'll put that in perspective. That is 35%. So I really curated my ebooks TBR a whole lot, but I am very proud of that. This was such a fun and necessary experiment for me to do, and I'm so glad that I got around to doing it. It was something that I knew I needed to do, but I have been pushing off for so long, so I'm glad I finally forced myself to do it. It was sort of a spur of the moment thing and I made myself just go with it. But yes, I'm very happy with how this project turned out. Let me know if you're surprised by how many books I kept and didn't keep. And thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little video, this little challenge that I set for myself. And of course, if you want to follow along with my journey of reading down my extremely large TBR that is now at 255. Again, I do weekly vlog and talk about all of the books that I read within that week. So you should definitely check that out if you're interested in following along with my journey. And also, maybe consider subscribing for when I do another one of these challenges. And thank you again for watching. It really means a lot to me. But if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, comment whatever you feel like commenting, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!